You're waiting for your fantasy to sign a contract, or if the medicine needs to bite deeper. If an apology erases 10 offenses in your head, that's gambling, not love. You weren't naive. You were loyal. You were honest. You kept showing up, hoping consistency would eventually train the storm to become a house. The problem isn't that you loved too much. It's that you loved inside a contract you never read. High affection, sudden distance. Tender words, cold face. That rhythm isn't romance losing its way. It's intermittent reinforcement, binding you to chase the next high, while ignoring the balance sheet of how you're treated. In 90 seconds, I'll give you a 2-minute tool that turns fog into data. But first, let me name the bruise you've been hiding. You're not actually waiting for her to change. You're waiting for your private story to be redeemed. The story that says, if I love hard enough, I'll finally be chosen. There's a noble instinct in that, and it's exactly why it hurts this much. You kept smoothing over the small cuts because you were investing in a future version of her who would wake up grateful and soft. You believed patience would be the currency that buys transformation. It never was. In relationships, terms aren't written by what you say. They're written by what you enforce. Every time a line crossed your standard, and you swallowed it, a clause was added to the invisible contract. His price for disrespect is a sigh and a longer explanation. This is where men drift into speeches. Don't. A boundary isn't a paragraph. A boundary is a price. And before you publish any price to anyone else, you need a ledger for yourself. Start the exception ledger today. 2 minutes. No drama. No analysis. On a clean note, list the last 30 days on the left. On the right, write exceptions. An exception is any moment you allowed what violates your standard because you feared conflict more than self-betrayal. Public jokes that cut and then get framed as you're too sensitive. Unilateral plan changes that cost your time. Affection used as leverage for compliance. Count them. Not the stories around them, the count. The number will say what your optimism refuses to say aloud. Michael 41 did it without making a scene. He didn't confront her, didn't post a quote, didn't audition for the moral high ground. He logged each exception for 3 months. 6 pages. No insults, no diagnoses, just dates, and what it cost him each time he let it slide. When he read that list to himself, his body reacted before his mind formed a theory. A long exhale, a loosened jaw, a simple knowing that he wasn't crazy, he was subsidizing a contract he never agreed to. Clarity didn't make him cruel. It made him accurate. Accuracy is the first kindness you owe yourself. Beware of the counterfeit repairs that keep you trapped. An apology that carries a new exception inside, it is not repentance. It's a reset. I'm sorry, but you know how work is translates to, I'll be late again. Please don't charge me. A flirty smile after public contempt is not affection. It's sugar on a bruise. A passionate weekend after a week of silence is not intimacy. It's a spike that blinds your judgment for another cycle. The casino gives you just enough lights to lose track of time. That's how you trade years for maybe. There's one brutal, clean comparison that collapses fantasy into reality. Ask yourself, would I accept this from a business partner? Not because love should be a spreadsheet, but because respect is universal. If changing terms, mid-deal would end a contract at work, why do you sign your name to it at home? If a partner mocked your competence in front of clients, would you keep the partnership because he had a rough day? You already know how to defend standards where money is on the line. Defend them where your soul is on the line. The ledger won't fix the relationship. It will fix your vision. And when vision clears, action becomes simple. You won't need to deliver a speech about values. You'll publish a price and collect once. You won't need to chase her into understanding. You'll walk your standard without a parade. Precision isn't cruelty. Precision is love with a backbone. As you switch from negotiating with your fantasy to negotiating with facts, something subtle clicks. The door you've been polishing stops seducing you. You stop twisting the handle because you remember the most important detail. It was never your door. And when you stop begging a locked door to open, you finally hear the other sound you forgot existed in your life: the quiet thermostat inside you recalibrating to a climate that doesn't confuse adrenaline with love. You felt the thermostat inside you start to move. And that's the first honest sign that something deeper is happening than preference. You don't simply like a certain type of woman. Your nervous system recognizes a climate. When a familiar storm walks into the room, your chest opens as if oxygen just increased. When steadiness sits across from you, your body calls it quiet, then calls quiet boring, then goes looking for weather. This is not romance. This is training. In 90 seconds, I'll give you the 4-signal check that separates arousal from alignment. First, I want you to notice how predictable your unique story has been. Attachment echo is the phenomenon that makes yesterday's pain feel like today's passion. If love in your past was paired with criticism, your body will tolerate criticism as the price of love. If attention arrived only after you performed, you will keep performing and call the exhausting commitment. That's why you label high volatility women as chemistry and low volatility women as flat. Chaos has a taste. It's sharp, fast, and addictive. Calm has a taste too, but if your palate has only known sugar and salt, nuance registers as nothing. Your system doesn't warn you when the storm begins, because the barometer is set to treat storms as proof you're alive. The pattern hides in your calendar. You swear you're energized, yet your best routines start to erode. Gym sessions slip. Bedtime becomes a negotiation with your phone. High-priority work blocks fracture into microchecks for messages that never arrive on time. You call this excitement. Your body calls it depletion. Look at what actually expands around her and what contracts. If laughter grows, but sleep shrinks. If touch grows, but focus collapses. If texting grows, but presence dies, you're not falling in love. You're falling into a loop. Here is the signal log 14. It's simple, fast, and brutal in the best way. After any interaction, score 4 metrics from 1 to 5. Sleep latency that night. Focus the next morning, appetite at lunch, and whether you reach for a distraction buffet in the first hour back home. Do this for 14 consecutive days. Don't annotate. Don't romanticize. Numbers, not poetry. If 3 out of 4 signals sync consistently with a specific person, your body has already filed the risk assessment your mind refuses to read. The goal isn't to demonize her. The goal is to stop outsourcing your safety to adrenaline. Ethan put the log on his phone and ran it for 2 weeks. With the woman he called a spark, his chart looked like a seismograph for hours of anxious sleep. Stop-start concentration before noon, appetite suppressed. Thumb compulsively scrolling, as if the feed had oxygen. With the woman he called quiet, his numbers climbed 7 hours of unbroken sleep. 2 deep work blocks completed, normal appetite, phone untouched until lunch. Nothing about the quiet woman was dull. She just didn't activate his craving. Once he named the difference, his thermostat began to reset. He wasn't bored. He was detoxing. Men get trapped in 2 myths that keep the loop alive. The first is that boredom equals incompatibility. Boredom often equals withdrawal. The absence of spikes feels empty only because you measured vitality by the height of your adrenaline. Give your palate time to learn new flavors. What begins as quiet becomes signal-rich once your receptors stop screaming. The second myth is that intuition is sacred and must be obeyed. Intuition refined by trauma is not a compass. It's a magnet pinned near metal. Until you move the magnet, it will keep pointing you to the same north, the one that hurts. Your nervous system learns through exposure and contrast, not through lectures. Expose it to steadiness on purpose. Design dates in daylight, with rhythm and clarity. Coffee, then a long walk. Dinner, then a bookstore. Activities that create conversation without performance. Contrast how your body behaves afterward. Watch how you breathe when you're not being tested. Masculinity is not the ability to stand in a storm forever. It is the ability to build where storms don't decide your day. There are subtle tells that your climate is wrong, even when the moments feel right. If small delays spike disproportionate anxiety, the bond is wired to withdrawal and reward. If jokes that slice are followed by heat that feels like repair, you're being trained by herd-then-soothe cycles. If your humor turns defensive with people who didn't cause this, your reserves are already compromised. A relationship that expands you will expand your patience for the world, not just your appetite for her. Here's the promised signal. Check. Tonight, after you see her, ask, how fast did I fall asleep? Tomorrow, ask, did I hold a 90-minute focus block before noon? At lunch, ask, did I eat like a man with an appetite? In the first hour alone, ask, did I default to scrolling as if my phone were a ventilator? Score it, record it, move on. Do this for 14 days, and you'll know whether you're choosing a woman or choosing whether. Arousal is a surge. Alignment is a fit. Surges will come and go. A fit will build a life. You never saw a signature, yet the terms keep renewing. Small jokes that cut a little too deep. Plans changed without notice while you stall in doorways. Affection withheld until you perform. None of it arrives with a dotted line, but together it behaves like a contract filed in a drawer you haven't opened. In relationships, terms aren't established by what you announce. They're established by what you enforce. If the late fee is 0, lateness becomes policy. If the price of contempt is a tense smile and a longer explanation, contempt becomes a discount. In 90 seconds, I'll hand you a 12-word sentence that resets terms without drama first. We need to stop pretending words can replace prices. A boundary isn't a paragraph. A boundary is a price. When your mouth says, "This matters," but your feet stay put, the relationship believes your feet. Speeches are often negotiations for permission. Enforcement is a quiet publication of value. Think of the subscriptions you forgot to cancel. Every month, the charge slips through because you never executed the one action that ends it. Intimacy has the same logic. Respect erodes, not because you lack poetic language, but because you keep auto-renewing the plan that raids your self. Trust. Write your rates with the 3 clauses rule. 3 non-negotiables that define the cost of your presence. Simple. Measurable. Free of therapy jargon. Examples: no public contempt, no unilateral changes to shared plans, no sex as leverage, then choose one. Clause to enforce in the next 7 days if crossed. This is crucial. You do it once, calmly, without theater. If public contempt appears, you end the scene. If plans affecting your time are changed unilaterally, you opt out and keep your original schedule. If intimacy becomes a bargaining chip, you close the store. Do not argue for your right to charge what you charge. People who value you will pay. People who don't will seek a cheaper marketplace. Here is the promised sentence. It's not clever. It's clean. I don't trade in contempt. I'm stepping out, now. 12 words. No accusations, no biography, no counter-insult. It states the currency, states the action, ends the scene. Use variants that fit the clause. I don't accept unilateral changes. I'm keeping my schedule. I don't do leverage with intimacy. I'm done for tonight. When you say it once and move, you create gravity. Gravity doesn't shout. It simply costs something to ignore. Luis 45, treated the dynamic like a professional agreement. Early on, she joked about his income. He told himself she was anxious and smiled it off. A month later, the same joke landed in front of friends. The smile bought another month. Third instance, he didn't deliver a speech. He placed his card on the table and said, "I don't trade in contempt. I'm stepping out now." He paid, wished her a good evening, and left. No angry texts, no long debrief. The next morning, "I didn't realize how it landed. Won't happen again." The contract didn't change because she became someone else. It changed because he stopped pricing himself at zero. There are traps designed to siphon your resolve. Beware the firm talk that's secretly a request for approval. If you need consensus to act, your price just dropped. Avoid the victory lap of a long paragraph after enforcement. The system reads patterns, not prose. Reject perfectionism. Predictable enforcement beats flawless delivery. Miss a cue, correct it at the next one, and keep moving. The point isn't theatrical dominance. The point is legibility terms, so clear they can be felt. What happens immediately after your first enforcement is diagnostic. Respect adjusts. Control escalates. If escalation arrives, mockery, spite, a rewrite of history, do not litigate inside the storm. Let your absence do the explaining your words never could. Absence isn't a tantrum. It's an invoice. People who value you will reconcile to the rate. People who need you cheap will look elsewhere and call it incompatibility. Translation: your clarity will save you months of trying to convert a regime into a partnership. A quick retention promise for your own mind. In 90 seconds tomorrow, write your 3 clauses and choose the one you'll enforce next week, if crossed. Place them in your notes app. Read them before dates, the way a pilot reads a checklist quietly, consistently, without bravado. And if this has already started to lift the fog. I curated 3 short readings in the description. No theory. Only tools you can run this week. You weren't blind. You were painting. Idealization doesn't delete red flags. It recolors them and calls the new shade destiny. When something in you aches to be repaired, an old rejection, a parent's sharp warmth, love that only arrived after you performed, you recruit the present to fix the past. You didn't fall for a stranger. You fell for an image you layered over her. A careful mask built with the exact traits that would soothe a wound you never got to name. When reality bleeds through the paint, the shock you feel isn't stupidity. It's grief for the story that was carrying you. Projection is not a poetic metaphor. It's a fast and dirty survival mechanism. Your nervous system would rather navigate a familiar map, even if that map leads through thorns, than stand in an unknown field without coordinates. If criticism trailed affection in your history, you'll tolerate criticism as the price of closeness. If attention only showed up after you achieved, you'll perform on cue and call the exhaustion devotion. That's why you translated contempt into playful teasing, unreliability into free spirit, and silence into she needs space. Each reinterpretation wasn't a lie. It was hope bargaining for one more week of a story that promised to make you whole. Observation breaks the spell because observation doesn't negotiate. Run the mirror audit and keep it mercilessly simple. Write 3 repeated patterns you experience with her. Then answer 1 question for each. Where did I learn to accept this? Not why she does it. Why you tolerate it. It's a biography of permission. If you learned to read eye rolls as normal because a parent's warmth came with disdain, your body still mistakes disdain for depth. If you learned that abrupt disappearances were just moods, your body still reads the return as proof of love. Naming that imprint replaces fog with coordinates. Once you have coordinates, you stop walking in circles. Marcus, 39, didn't try to cure himself with theory. He wrote a short letter to the 12-year-old boy who waited long stretches for attention that arrived as weather sudden. Unforecastable, gone by morning. We can like steady now. He read it quietly, before dates for a month. At first, punctuality felt mechanical. Plain speech felt dull. Direct kindness felt suspicious. By the third week, his breathing changed after calm dinners, not after dramatic ones. He still appreciated intensity, but he stopped confusing intensity, anchored in respect, with intensity, anchored in chaos. He didn't become cynical. He became specific. To make the audit bite, compare love to work without making love a spreadsheet. Ask the brutal question that collapses fantasy. Would I accept this from a business partner? If a partner teased you about competence in front of clients, would you laugh and re-sign the contract? If a partner changed terms unilaterally and framed your objection as overreacting, would you keep investing? If the answer is no in the room where your money lives, it's no in the room where your soul sleeps. Respect doesn't change definition because the furniture does. There are practical tells that projection is steering. If you explain her to your friends more than you enjoy her in private, the painting is doing the talking. If you keep translating the same behavior, contempt becomes shyness. Inconsistency becomes freedom. Jealousy becomes passion. Dictionary serves the painting, not the person. If every boundary attempt devolves into debate about your tone rather than a look at the behavior itself, the courtroom is defending the mask you created. Close the case. Your tone can improve. Her pattern must change. One is refinement. The other is the contract. Now, apply the audit with teeth. Choose one pattern from your list. Write the smallest concrete boundary that would expose whether love or story sits across from you. No public contempt. No unilateral plan changes. No intimacy as leverage. Then hold that boundary without sermon. Projection feeds on debate. Clarity feeds on execution. If the pattern stops, you didn't destroy romance. You ended a subsidy. If it escalates, you didn't lose the one. You discovered a loop that was asking you to pay for your past with your present. Precision doesn't make you hard. It makes you trustworthy to yourself. When the painting is set down, two things happen. First, you see her who she is, not who you needed. Second, you see you what you permit, what you protect. If love survives without your paint, relief comes not as a spike, but as a steadying of the chest. If it doesn't, relief still comes, because you stop financing a hallucination. And once the mask is off, the next decision is no longer about finding better words. It's about whether your standards have gravity strong enough to hold their shape when tested. Authority isn't a louder voice. It's a steadier orbit. People move differently around a body with gravity. When your no is rare, delayed, or padded with explanations, there's no mass to organize the space. She tests not because she's evil, but because every relationship searches for the edge of the field. If the edge keeps moving, the game never stabilizes. In 60 seconds, I'll give you 3 sentences that end a scene without a fight. Start with architecture, not attitude. The presence window is simple. Define when you are open and when you close, daily and weekly. Not as punishment, as rhythm. Example, weeknights. I'm online 7:30 to 9 p.m. I'm offline after 9 o'clock. I reply at 8:30, treating the message model's clarity without ice. It sounds like, I'm offline after 9. I'll respond at 8:30. Then you obey your own times even when it would be flattering to break them. Rhythm protects depth. Endless access destroys it. Only the immature demand permanent availability and call it intimacy. Next, remove the theater after enforcement. Practice no explain. The more you explain, the more you invite debate about tone, history, and how she felt your words. A clear rule enforced once teaches faster than a flawless speech. If contempt appears arrows, cutting sarcasm, a public jab you, end the scene. That crosses my line. I'm stepping out. No lecture. No legal brief. If a plan that affects your time is changed unilaterally, you decline participation and keep your original schedule. If intimacy becomes leverage, you end the negotiation and close the store. Gravity doesn't submit a memo to prove it exists. It simply makes ignoring costly. Write 3 sentences in your notes to carry everywhere. I don't trade in contempt. I'm stepping out now. I don't accept unilateral changes. I'm keeping my schedule. I don't do leverage with intimacy. I'm done for tonight. These aren't slogans. They're invoices. They state the currency, state the action, and end the scene. One calm execution is worth 10 eloquent warnings. Daniel, 43, lived this without theatrics. He wrote 3 clauses and read them before dates, like a pilot reads a checklist. First, I roll in public. He paid the bill, said, I don't trade in contempt. I'm stepping out now, and left. No texts, no post-game analysis. First unilateral plan change that cost his weekend. I'm keeping my schedule. He honored previous commitments. When intimacy turned into a bargaining chip, he closed the store for the night. 2 things happened. Either respect grew inside the orbit his gravity created, or the connection shrank until it could no longer pretend to be partnership. Avoid the traps that siphon your resolve. Don't swap patterns for paragraphs. If you deliver a dramatic monologue after enforcement, you convert a boundary into content. Don't turn enforcement into a loyalty test for her. It is a loyalty test for you. And reject perfectionism. Predictable enforcement beats flawless performance. Miss a cue, correct it at the next one, and keep moving. The point isn't dominance. The point is legibility, terms so clear they can be felt without a prologue. Expect immediate feedback after your first enforcement. Respect adjusts. Control escalates. If escalation arrives mockery, spite, revisionist history, don't litigate inside the storm. Your absence will do the explaining your words never could. Absence isn't a tantrum. It's cost. People who value you reconcile to the rate. People who need you cheap will call your standard cold and look for a cheaper marketplace. Translation: your gravity will filter without you having to campaign. There is a quiet masculinity in keeping time with yourself. You answer within your window, you close when you said you would, and you enforce once without heat. It looks unglamorous compared to the opera of arguments, but opera doesn't build a life. Rhythm does. And as rhythm becomes your default, the next decision becomes easier to make without noise. When a door keeps violating your price, you don't pound harder or pray louder. You stop touching the handle and walk away while your standards are intact. Leaving well is not punishment. It is maintenance for the man you still intend to be. You don't need a dramatic send-off to prove you finally see the contract. In 90 seconds, I'll give you the exact line that ends the loop without a speech. Clarity builds a structure you can live inside. The craving for one last talk or one last weekend is not resolution. It is your attachment system begging for a final spike. If you satisfy the spike, the story restarts with new language and the same invoice. Treat the end as medicine, not theater, and dose it on schedule. A clean exit begins before the door. Write a straight line you can deliver without heat when the loop tries to reopen it. We want different contracts. I'm closing this one. Practice until your nervous system recognizes the sentence as a switch, not an argument. That is exit rehearsal. Then run the 21-day exit protocol the way a pilot runs a checklist. Days 1, 2, 3 are remove objects that force your mind to rehearse the relationship: photos, gifts, playlists, routes you drive to past shared places. Not because you hate the past, but because your body doesn't need props while it stabilizes. Nights are loud in the first week. Silence them by starving them of cues. Days 4 to 7 are signal reset. You are not strong because you stay reachable. You are confused. Block what must be blocked, mute the rest, and protect a strict sleep and wake rhythm. Train, even lightly, at a fixed hour. Eat on schedule. Keep your phone in another room for the first 90 minutes of the day so your amygdala learns there is no emergency to solve. The more predictable the signals, the less your system will beg for the old chaos as proof that you are alive. Days 8 to 14 are identity reinvestment. Drama had been your texture. Now you create texture on purpose. 2 dinners with men who want good for you and tell you the truth. 1 solo day with distance, a trail, a shoreline. A museum where you stand still long enough to actually see what is in front of you. 1 new skill that uses breath or handsboxing, woodworking, cooking, breathwork. You are not distracting yourself from loss. You are returning ownership to the parts of you that outsourced meaning to volatility. Days 15 to 21 are few. Write the terms you carry forward, the 3 clauses you enforce, the window you keep for communication, the slow dating pace you follow so chemistry can be measured against alignment. Decide the earliest moment exclusivity is even on the table. Set a maximum daily text volume you accept and a number of weekly dates that protect your work and health. Share these commitments with 1 friend who will not flatter you. The friend is not a referee. He is a witness that keeps your future from being negotiated away by a single late-night craving. Expect your body to protest. Cravings peak, like waves intense, for minutes, not forever. Mark the first 72 hours of silence as sacred. If you can hold that line, sleep deepens and the mind stops bargaining. The most dangerous relapse is the last conversation. It arrives dressed as maturity, promising closure, and functions like a relapse. You are not trying to be understood. You are trying to feel one more surge. Choose steadiness over story. When the door knocks, let your sentence be the end of it. We want different contracts. I'm closing this one, then keep walking on schedule. Absence will do the explaining your words never could. And the man who honors his own calendar discovers that peace is a rhythm, not a miracle. Peace on schedule changes the shape of your days. You wake without scanning the horizon for storms. You did not become colder. You became legible to yourself. When a standard has gravity, you don't need to announce it. You live it, and the room arranges. 3 questions. Keep the compass true. What have I been calling chemistry that is actually familiar chaos? Which clause must be read aloud today, so I don't pay in silence again? What would it look like to leave once, and not return, even when craving spikes? Write them, answer, act without speeches. If respect meets you there, you will feel it in the steadiness of your chest. If it doesn't, you will feel your feet walk away without rage. Because dignity is not noise. It is direction. Carry forward the tools that turned fog into fact. The exception ledger that counted costs. The signal log that taught your body to vote. The 3 clauses that priced your presence. The exit protocol that closed the loop. Use them early, use them quietly, use them without apology. This is how you stop financing a fantasy and start building a life. If partnership feels heavy and control feels familiar, next episode is your map. She doesn't want a partner, she wants control. Understand the game. Tap now.